Alrighty, what up guys? What is up? Today is another freaking live video. Ready to say my star. Anyways, so I'll try and make this a short one, I reckon. But I can't make any promises because I just feel I just feel it in my spirit. Like I just know there's gonna be a few things that's gonna come to my mind. And so we'll see. We'll see. So I'll try and make this a short one, I reckon. So, anyways, when it comes to the topic of the video, I really just go back to my default words, don't I? I notice that about myself. It's very, very interesting. I try not to, but I think it's more like an overthinking thing, right? I think I'm just that in that moment, I've noticed the pattern is like that. Usually that's when like, because I'm trying to think of something really, really quick, and then my mind is like, oh my gosh, and then I just end up defaulting to the same old word. So that's probably something a bitch should work on. All right, now, what's it called? Buckle up, bitch. Not jokes. So, just a preface to this video as well. Like, this is more just like a kind of like perspective, like just word bomb type kind of thing. So, some of it, maybe take it with a grain of salt, but we'll see how it goes anyway. Just a pre-warning though, because yeah, I'm just kind of just snowballing. I don't know. There's free balling, I guess. I don't even know what the fuck the right word for it is. But you get the concept, you get the idea, you get it, you know what I mean? If you don't get it, maybe ask for clarification in the comments and we'll see what we can do. But honestly, we're just gonna get into it. So I had myself thinking today. I had these thoughts coming to me today because at the end of the day, like that's what you're doing when you're thinking. You're receiving thoughts. You're not because you say I got a thought. You didn't say that like you created a thought. In that instant when you say I got a thought, that's you naturally just you know doesn't need an explanation. So, anyways, when it comes to me getting a thought today, I was thinking about this idea about how, like, for example, because I've been like doing my readings and stuff like that, and just from my past experiences when I used to be a reader as well, but I wouldn't charge, and especially coming from the space that I was in, there was like this guilt around charging, around like selling your thing that like especially because I feel like the whole concept around it is like because you're helping people or because you have like this skill or ability to be able to help people, a lot of the time certain people, not everyone, but a lot of people who are heavily indoctrinated and just in this like shadow government system that they've created, but like deep in it. Because at the end of the day, in some way, shape, or form, you're going to be interacting with this system in general. But when you're deep in that energy, you know what I mean? There's like a tendency for individuals to kind of expect or think that like they are deserved help. And especially, I think this probably stems from the whole concept and idea of like people believing that uh, things are being done to them by some kind of greater power, right? Could take it back to like the whole in religious programming type shit. So it's like at the base of it, like people are just thinking to themselves, "Oh well, um, I deserve help because I'm going through suffering." Right? Or something like that. It's almost like like that pity me or victim type mentality that a lot of people could fall victim to, myself included, in the past. Otherwise, I wouldn't know how to even talk about this on such a deep level without actually going through these experiences, right? You know what I mean? So I'm able to go through each of the layers of it, and I'm also able to explain it in a way that's a lot more understandable, as opposed to if someone was just looking at it from a biased perspective. It'd be easy for someone to just be like, like, I think you're just being petty, or I think you're just overanalyzing, blah blah blah. Which in some cases it might just be them as well, but you just gotta um pay attention to each situation on a more clearer level, like with more clairvoyance, and then you'll be able to tell each scenario from the other scenario, and you'll be able to differentiate between someone who's just actually like doing it for one of the purposes I just mentioned or the other, because I kind of low-key just forgot what the heck that was. But, for those who are keeping on track, you know what I was talking about based on, the words that we use, or you can just rewind. So, this whole concept as well is like leading people, I feel like, as well into that mind state of like, okay, well, people must have to work. People should do this because almost like it's the right thing to do. You know what I mean? It's the right thing to do to work for someone else, because then it goes back to that whole like sacrifice for others type concept where, but like they've turned like the whole concept of like selling your soul into like, oh, this is like a good thing, like this is like the right thing to do, which is, there's nothing wrong with it at either, if that's the thing that you need to do at this point in time. But we all know that we would prefer a different system where you don't have to sell your soul, especially for a lot of the times, even our minimum wages are so low. You know what I mean? So you're working and spending something that's like, what is it called? Priceless, which is your time and your energy, and you're doing it for a certain amount of money. And at the end of the day, this is what probably leads a lot of people to wanting to start a business and so on and so forth, because then you're able to control how much your time is actually worth a lot better. You know what I mean? As opposed to in the system, the amount of time that you are deemed worth is a set rate usually, and even if you can raise it, it is usually within a set field or distance from the original set rate. You know what I mean? So if you were to ask for like a completely different rate, then a lot of people would feel like that's not the right thing to do, and that they should like compromise for the system. You know what I mean? But that's like the whole concept of them trying to get people to believe, and it's like lowering your standards. So now when you're in the system, you have to have lower standards. You have to have a lower state of being, because if you had anything higher, you wouldn't submit yourself to majority of the things that the system has to force you into in the first place. You would be like, oh, well, actually, you know what? Like, stiffen up my motherfucking coat. Like, get your collar. Like, maybe like, bitch, I deserve way more than what I'm being forced into with this system. You know what I mean? So, and don't get me wrong, some people are somewhere in the middle too. You know what I mean? Where they're like, but like a lot of people who are, let's say, aware and in a more expanded space usually will feel this way even if they don't act on it. You know what I mean? So take that and apply it to as whatever level anyone's in that's watching this video as well. But basically, you just have to have that lower amount of respect or standards for yourself to subject yourself to the system on a constant basis, especially if you're not even like condemning it or making any effort to actually like create your own way of kind of exiting the system at the percentage scale that you can do at the point in time that you're at your current journey, which is obviously going to change, because if we're evolving and changing and growing every day, your ability to be able to exit from the system will become either better or worse. That's the only thing that's going to really happen over time. You're either going to get better or worse at something. So when you're not actively trying to get better at something, you can assume, or if you're not actually getting better at something, then you can assume that you're most likely on the other side of it. Now, I mean, you could be in the middle, but like at that point, are you really like in the middle? Because even not manifesting anything could sometimes situation that might be good, but for the most part, a lot of individuals in life would consider that negative if they're just like kind of at like that middle stage and they're not really getting negative or positive improvement from something. You know what I mean? And like depending on the situation as well, you might want that, obviously. So, anyways, I don't want to go too deep into that because that's kind of more of a tangent energy anyway. But yeah, all the way down to that, like you're forced to be in a mind state and they're like prepping you. It's like grooming, like the system like grooms you to like be in a certain mind state so that you lower your standards, you lower your value for yourself, you lower your respect for yourself, like everything. So they're trying to like put all this esoteric weight on other people. So like not only physically are you carrying bricks for them and like you're using those physical bricks to build their buildings, to build up their system. And then not only that, but they're also putting all these esoteric bricks. So whatever the burdens they have to carry, whatever lack of value they feel like they have, whatever lack of respect they feel like they have, they put it on everyone else because that's the only way. It's like a narcissist. Like when a narcissist is sitting there and trying to down your credibility, down your value, down how much you respect yourself. Because in order for a person to even be in that space of doing all that to you, they are in that space themselves. Otherwise, they would be able to come at you at a better level, but they only know how to work at that level that they're already at. So if they're in a space and they're in a level of like, okay, at the end of the day, only way I can keep this person locked into this space that I want them in and acting the way that I want them to, I'm going to have to like attack them with all the tools and the weapons that I know how to use, of course. Because if you know how to do something, that's because you've been in that space or you've worked in that space and that energy for a long time. You know what I mean? So they'll be able to down you with all the different things that they struggle with and they deal with on a daily basis. And if they were more expanded, then they would obviously be able to do something different. It's like, for example, instead of downing you, they'd be more in a space where they're just teaching you and you're able to understand and they're able to meet you at your level. And then you're just able to kind of grow and expand in a more healthier way as opposed to the way that they do it. They force people to grow and expand, but in a negative kind of way where it's like out of necessity, not because like growing and expanding is the natural part of life and we're in attunement with that, you know, and contracting, of course, because I don't want people to just get lost and think that growing and expanding is the only thing as well, just from hearing those few words. Like contracting, you know, expansion, contraction. But when you've got everyone in the population who's more just going within, more working on their individual, more trying to like work for their own, and even when it comes to the workplace, like everyone's just in it for like a certain goal, a certain idea. Like you end up meeting people at work because you are all in that similar goal of wanting to work towards like getting a check, right? So that you can pay your bills, you can make sure that you're fed and everything else, and you can have all the things that you want. But then everybody else there is in that mind state as well, most likely. They're all, because you're all going to be wanting to do it so that you can get paid and get a check. But depending, like if you're in a different space where you've got like you've got a purpose about you, you've got a creative goal or creative talent that you want to share with the world or something like that, then you'll be able to direct all that energy into that space as opposed to just doing it because you want money for your necessities, and then that kind of becomes more like you in that contractive space where you're just trying to do it to maintain your actual space and how you are and your environment, your atmosphere around you. Whereas if you're doing it in the other way, you're doing it to actually expand and push out and create something new and birth something new, whether it's your creative gift or talent or your purpose into the world. You know what I mean? And you're actually expanding the whole world as a whole, but by bringing your own individual creation into the world. So there's two types of people. You know, people could be doing that even on that scale. You know, people could be doing that for more monetary purposes, and then people could be doing it for more expansion, bringing something new, birthing something new kind of purposes in the world. So yeah, but then when people do that, for example, like if now that government also has people in that mindset of like, well, if you're um trying to birth something new into the world, like some people might even see you, or like you're just money hungry or blah 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 because of the way that the business system is built up, you know? So it's like, oh, like, but at the end of the day, nobody gives a fuck what those people think anyway, because like at the end of the day, people are gonna think negative or people are gonna think positive. I don't give a shit about either, you know, so I just try to let it all go. Obviously, you know, sometimes you might catch that thought, but the more you work at it, the more you'll be able to have like a stronger defense system against those certain thoughts. So when that comes into your space and you'll be like, I automatically know I don't fuck with that. I don't like that in my space. So, and then you just instantly start deflecting that thought whenever you get it, or you just don't add on to it, and eventually it will just start to dissipate because it has no ability to be able to grow. And then what's it called? Then some people, like those individuals, would be in that mindset because they're heavily indoctrinated, and they'll start to think that you're only doing that for money, but that at the end of the day comes from them being in a imbalanced space, so they're lost into a bias either way, and they're seeing it from a pedestal in terms of like, even if they're seeing it negatively, they're raising it on a negative pedestal, so they're dramatizing it and creating something that is really just self-reflecting, because we're all self-reflecting. So they'll be able to look at it like, oh, you're money hungry or you're this. But that's how they've got everyone in that backwards mindset as well. You know, the shadow government tries to get everyone to think that, like, from that more negative space, like how they're in, and therefore they'll be able to keep you controlled more, because now it's seen as negative or selfish to do something that's actually more on the selfless side, because you're trying to pursue your creative gift or talent, trying to create your purpose in the world, trying to create a legacy. And so a lot of people will be like, oh, well, you know, depending on who they are, obviously, at the end of the day, more aware and more like, how do I say, more intelligent spirits will be able to just see that and know. And that at the end of the day, those are the people who are you're gonna connect with more on a better level anyway, because they understand the kind of spiritual path that you're on, and they know that there's more to life than also meets the eye. So they're able to see things from behind the scenes and know that there's a difference between someone who's doing something just for money and someone who's doing something for a purpose, for a creative gift. You know what I mean? So those kind of people are low vibrational anyway for them to even think for a second. But that's how the government likes to have everyone sitting. You know, they like to have everyone sitting in that space of like, you know what? Like, that's bad, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's why the religion system works so well at keeping people under the government system too. And a lot of religious people will think that they're like escaping the system by being religious in some way, shape, or form. But at the end of the day, it's used in certain governmental systems in the world because of its ability to actually work with the system. It's not until people actually get out of that whole concept of religion and like go back to a more natural state of it, where you're actually paying attention to life and you're not looking at like man-made words on how to interpret life, because then you're starting to look at things from a more skewed perspective. And now you start to think there's like all kinds of stuff that doesn't actually exist in the world that we don't actually see in reality, but then you start to make it up like that, which is why it's better to stick from like a religious perspective, reading your religious texts as more of a what is it called, esoteric like type of thing, where you're actually seeing the meaning of something as opposed to looking at it from a history book, and you're looking at like these being literal things that happen, as opposed to just looking at it as like what's the meaning behind each thing, because that's a lot of people who are religious will already read it like that. They'll already read in their mind like, okay, like this thing means this, you know what I mean? But then when it comes to other certain parts in the book, it's like, no, this literally happened. And it's like, no, the whole thing is in that state of being of this thing means this. So like it's all like a metaphorical or like esoteric perspective of it. None of it is literal. But anyways, that's just another tangent too, a little bit. But that's just for getting a good idea of that whole religion concept and how it actually helps the system. And so then they've got people thinking like, oh well, they're escaping the system by being religious, but then because you're in that such a fear state, and then you're waiting as well for your God to come punish them. But like they've been in power for how many years, and your God hasn't actually punished them even once. So that's where it gets kind of lost, because then it's like you're in a fear state and you're thinking that you can't do anything, or especially when you're getting into that state where you're like, oh well, they've got some ability or power over your God. So now it's like their God is like more powerful than your God because they somehow are able to materialize better in the physical world. You know, so it's like really weird and backwards, because now you're even without actually acknowledging it, you're thinking that they're more powerful than you in some way for them to be able to uphold and create the system in the first place. But you're the one giving them the power inadvertently. But anyways, that's kind of a long thing. So yeah, that's like another layer. There's so many layers to how the government, shadow governments got everyone backwards into backwards thinking, because in order for them to do that, or in order for them to keep everyone under control, they have to get you thinking backwards. They have to get you to lower your value. They have to get you to be in an insecure, lower animalistic state of being, because otherwise, you know, you wouldn't be easy to control. It's the same way with how, as humans, we're able to teach and train certain animals, and even certain humans have even like managed to be able to like control animals in a more forceful way. That's the same kind of concept. They have to keep you into that animalistic state because you're in more of a state where you're below them. It's like how a bully like tries to put you beneath them, or only chooses you because you're beneath them at the end of the day. Because if they chose someone above them, you know, then they would feel less than, and they're trying to compensate for something. So if they see you as less than, then they'll be able to kind of create their own power dynamic and feel comfortable within themselves, so they know that you're not going to retaliate in the way that they think you will. And so then they feel more safe. They feel more secure within their decision of choosing you to pick on, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, just a lot. We're 24 minutes in. I might do a little bit more, and then we'll probably hop off. Hop off it, love. Hop off it, my goodness. But yeah, there's so many freaking layers. Like, damn, I could go on this for ages. But also, I'm curious, anyone in the comments, you guys got any input or anything like that, I'm always open to some friendly debates. Um some debates is good. Cusp of Gemini, so I like to have that little bit of rapport. But I noticed as well, like lately in my life, there hasn't been so many people that can really do that. And I think that's just due to the way that everyone's a lot of people are programmed. And so it can be difficult for people who are programmed to start to think for themselves on a deeper level, especially when someone like you comes into the space and you're talking about things on a level that like a lot of people don't necessarily mention, and it's like something new. So a lot of people, when you experience something completely brand new, you sometimes don't know how to react. You know what I mean? You're just in that fresh space because you've just been shown something that you've never experienced before. And so that's why I've figured that out while I'm doing this video, just figuring out why that happens in my life now, and why I see like people unsure on like how to actually react or respond to some of the things that I'm bringing like to the conversation, or you know. But yeah, the system is messed up, bitch. Like they be like in that snaky type mindset, like, so just whenever you think about the government, like just think like racist bully. Like that's really like pretty much it. Like it's nothing major, you know what I mean? It's nothing scary, it's nothing powerful. Like shout out to Dollar to Parliament because he's the one who brought up this. He said, like, don't ever let it go past being racist in their mind. It's literally that. Like, because at the end of the day, you can't be acting in the ways that they do and making systems in the ways that they do without first being in a lack space, in a insecure space, in a negative space by yourself. So you have to self-project that onto everyone else by keeping people in a limited system. And so that's why the system is faulty and broken. It's just down to the space that they're in. It's like hurt people, you know what I mean? So in order for the system to constantly being hurting people, they literally hurt people themselves. So that's why they have to keep people like as well who are not so much in a hurt space and a negative space, like shadow banned online and shit like that, because without them keeping everything in like a very controlled type space, then they wouldn't be able to exercise their power, because their power isn't power at all. It's like just it really ain't shit, really. And that's also why, like, as well, that reminded me of how they have in games, they have mana, which is actually a Maori word. They use mana, and they took from Maori our concept of mana, which is like your power, your spiritual strength in a way. It's a few things, but like those are probably the closest terms that in English maybe that you could use to describe that word. And they said, oh, we'll put it in our games where whenever you have like a magical character, whenever you have like a character who can do like abilities and stuff like that, they always put like their mana as like the amount of energy that you have to use towards those abilities. So then they say like they stole like Maori energy, they stole our mana, and then they used it for their magic, for their abilities. So that's how they're trying to like play as being like the ariki, in Maori, which is like a Maori form of like a leader, chief, if probably the closest thing you could equate it to. So they get like, oh, now they're the ariki because they have all the mana, they have all the energy, they have all the energy towards their abilities, which at the end of the day, you can't, that's like faulty in itself, because you can't actually take someone's mana like that without like them expressly giving it to you. But when they got a whole bunch of people like chiefs and stuff like that, or the ariki, and the rangatira, which is like another form of a leader, which is more like based on like protection and stuff like that. So, or taking care, like a nurturer kind of energy. So, when it comes to them getting all of them to sign the treaty, the Te Tiriti o Waitangi, right? They got everyone in that state where um, now they're seeing it like, oh, well, see, we got you to sign this treaty, and now we've got all the power, and now we've taken over your land. So then they're like, okay, well, now we've taken all your mana, right? But like, that's not necessarily like true, because at the end of the day, if those people are still doing them and still living their life unaffected and unbothered, they're still reclaiming back their mana anyway. And especially if they're more in tune with their culture and living more in a way that's in tune with their tupuna, their ancestors, then they're not necessarily at a loss for their mana in the first place, because you don't really take them or stop them from doing anything. You just put like a obstacle or hurdle in the way for them to actually just like end up seeing as like piss, ain't shit. So yeah, they do that on like every level when it comes to people's cultures. They always steal like words, concepts, creative like creations and all that shit, so that then they can like play the part. They do it on like the highest level for the Native Americans, which have got everybody acting and sounding and dressing and talking like Native Americans and stuff like that. So it's just weird. But they do that on like smaller levels or different levels depending on where you're from, depending on which country you're in. You know, that's why what's it called? New Zealand, Australia. I don't know if other countries do this very often, but we have like, because you know how every country has like that crest for their government system, right? In New Zealand, you got our crest has like an animal and a plant in it. So then they're like trying to say that like, you know, they've become like with one with the nature, because they've taken on the indigenous animals and put it on their crest and their seal, so they're sealing that energy onto them. So they feel like they have more power and ability to reign over. And same with Australia, they've got like the emu and the kangaroo. So then they're like, oh, we've got like that intact and tuned with nature. And especially with, I'm sure if you go into deeper details about what the actual emu and the kangaroo even represent, especially like you've got the kangaroo being able to hop to something, being able to jump to the occasion, like all that type of shit. And the way kangaroos are, like they're very, very like hardy animals. They're very, they can be quite aggressive and territorial. Well, they're not necessarily territorial because they'll jump from place to place, but they can be quite defensive of their parameter. So if you're jumping into their space, you're jumping into their parameter, especially if you're too close, they might start throwing hands. So, take all those qualities and apply them on how they apply to a more humanistic way of living. And that's whatever that quality that they feel like they've stolen and taken from that land, you know what I mean? And put it on their crest. So I'm pretty sure you got, what's it called? A lot of other countries, in their crest, they might only have plants. They might not have animals. They might not even have any plants. But, that'll be based on the system most likely, and how they ended up taking over that system and what they felt like they were able to extract and pull from that atmosphere, the character, the personality of whatever culture that lives there. You know what I mean? Because that's like its own kind of character that you can imagine as its own person. Similar to how we have like certain deities or atua in Māori who personify each different aspect of life. You've got the sky, you've got the earth, and so each of these things has its own personification, its own characterization. So if you look at that in terms of the Māori culture itself, or whatever culture you're originally from, and then see that as its own character too, its own personification as well. And then seeing their own culture as their own personification. So there's like some freaking marble, mechanical, like stone, like humanoid type being, right? And then cultures like Maori and stuff would be more like natural based, more have things to do with more with natural and nature. So you got like that. It's like a War of the Titans type shit, So through their culture in their mind, if their culture and how they are, and they can exert that on you, and they can get you to worship their deities, worship their atua, worship their concepts and ideas and feelings, then in their mind, that's their titan or their god going to war. Like how in Greece they have like the titans going to war with your titan, and so then you're not actually able to um work with your own energy, work with your own titan, work with your own atua as a culture, as a collective, as a whole, because now they've forced you to be in their system, under their atua, you know, under their deities. And then they've convinced you that it's like some overall one, when like each individual culture had its own representations or ideas of these concepts. And in fact, like European culture probably didn't even have this until they started invading other countries like America. So they've got everyone thinking backwards, even in terms of that level of things, So now you think that like your culture is more primitive if you're like heavily indoctrinated and you haven't grown up around or learned enough about it, or you just don't have the right mind or perspective to be looking at it from. So now you think it's less than. And I think that it's not as intelligent. But like again, everyone's always self-projecting. So for them to get you to even think that, they have to be in that space themselves. They're looking at it from a not intelligent space because they're not as intelligent to be able to comprehend or know what it actually truly means. So in their mind, it's like, it's like when you meet someone who's more like practical, more logical, they're so left-brained, right? And in their mind, they see you as stupid, or they're looking at the thing that you believe in as stupid. But you can probably explain it in a perfectly practical way that actually makes sense, and it's not like just in the air. You'll be able to relate it to like how you can literally see examples of this happening in reality. You can relate it to even other examples that's like a little bit more nuanced, but the way that you tie it together, you'd be able to explain it in a way where it's like, oh, well, yeah, that like kind of undeniable in a lot of ways. You'd be able to do all that, right? And then this type of individual who's more logical and more practical based and not so like right, it doesn't have that right blend of their feminine, their right brain. Then they'll be looking at you in their mind, and you can just tell they probably think that it's all stupid, it's like primitive, but even without saying it, because if you're even in the space to even be dealing with this, you'll be able to know, because you wouldn't even be the type of person to say it. You'd just be like, I already know this type of person. They're only just going to create more type shit to validate their own perspective. So I'm going to just say like a couple sentences and then just leave them to them, because I know that if I delve into it, it's just going to end up in a back and forth for them trying to prove their point, because at the end of the day, they're not even in that space of being able to listen, right? So you just know. And then instantly you can see that person, the way that they see you is actually how they are acting and actually how they are being. So they see you as primitive. They see you as not intelligent. They see you as like lost in your emotions or whatever, because that's actually how they are. Like they are being that by even rejecting and being so quick to reject your initial concept of it in the first place. So yeah, I think I'll leave it at this because I did try and make it short. It's like about 40 minutes long. That's not too bad. It's not too bad because I do want to get some other things done. But if I feel like it, I may jump on again. Um, I'll see you guys for the next video. But yeah, freaking look at everything with freaking one eye, mate. I'm telling you, one eye. So, because at the end of the day, your two eyes, the 3D, will fucking deceive you and have you thinking that it is not the way it actually is. It'll have you thinking things are backwards and not knowing that that is backwards, and you would think that forwards is actually backwards and backwards is actually forwards. And now you're just like arguing for something that you don't actually know about fully because you'd be just reading a whole bunch of books from people who are not actually that intelligent and aren't actually able to explain it in the best way possible because they're looking at it from a biased perspective or a lost type perspective, as opposed to someone like me who's actually more in that balanced space, and I can explain it, and you know that like if someone else was to hear this, they would really be able to rebut a lot of the things I'm saying. They'd just be either like I was just talking about, that type of person who is like not intelligent, but like is looking at you like you're not intelligent and isn't even listening in the first place, or they just end up being like in denial in general. Or you can agree. Like it's really like that's the way I kind of see it when I start speaking a lot of certain things that I speak, and I'm like, okay, yeah, like there's not really much you can actually say against it, and if you do say something against it, I already know deep down, so I don't need validation. But a lot of people in the system that we're raised in, you know, people were like they need validation, but that's because the government and the shadow government, really should I say, needs a validation. So they're trying to get everyone else to be in the same space as them, because misery loves company, and fuck the system that we're in. And I'm not in it, actually. I refuse, I rebuke, I reject. I do, tend to dabble because the system is, I know the world is in that system, so I tend to kind of try and jump rope. But for the most part, I'm starting to reject that concept that I'm in this system in some way, because I'm seeing things from the outside looking in majority of the time. So how can I be in something if I'm looking at the outside looking in? I'm more of on the outside space is what I'm really starting to see. So, peace, guys. Peace.